My tears hadn't even dried after my husband Mark's passing when my only son, David, brought a stranger into our apartment. The air was still thick with the scent of heart medication and antiseptic. Funeral wreaths were still lying on the living room table, and he walked in shoes on like nothing had happened. Behind him followed a sharply dressed man holding a leather briefcase. "Mom, meet Mr. Carter," David said without a hint of shame, avoiding my gaze. "He's a notary. We need you to sign over your share of the apartment. Let's be honest, it's not like you're going to need it anymore." I froze in the hallway. His words, said as casually as if he were asking me to pass the salt, hit me harder than the news of Mark's death. We had been married 40 years. We'd gotten this 3-bedroom apartment back in the 1980s, remodeled it ourselves, picked every piece of furniture together. This wasn't just real estate, this was our home, our sanctuary, our history. This was where David took his first steps, where we celebrated every holiday, argued, forgave, where I had just buried my husband 3 days ago, and now my son, my own flesh and blood, stood there telling me I didn't need my home anymore. I looked at him, trying to find the little boy I used to read bedtime stories to, but in front of me stood a stranger, cold and calculating. And though she wasn't in the room, I could feel his wife, Rachel, standing behind him, invisible but ever present. I was sure this was her idea. From the very beginning, she'd looked at me and our home like she was appraising assets. "David, what are you saying?" My voice trembled into a whisper. "Your father, he just—" "Mom, please, no drama," he interrupted with a grimace. "We've made up our minds. Rachel, the kids, and I are moving in here. We're cramped in our 1-bedroom and you don't need all this space. We'll find you a room somewhere, or even a nice assisted living place. It's for your own good." The notary, Mr. Carter, cleared his throat and placed a folder on the coffee table. "Mrs. Bennett, it's just a standard property transfer," he said with professional detachment. "All you need to do is sign here and here. Your son becomes the sole owner." I looked at his expensive pen, his manicured fingers, and then at David's determined face. What rose in me wasn't sorrow anymore, it was icy fury. The kind of fury that gives strength when you feel completely drained. I stood up straight. "I'm not signing anything," I said, voice clear and firm. "This is my home too. And as long as I'm alive, I'm not going anywhere. You can take your papers and leave." David flushed with anger. "Mom, you don't understand. You're ruining everything. We have no other choice." "There's always a choice," I snapped. "Like earning your own apartment, like your father and I did, instead of throwing your mother out on the street." At that moment, Rachel finally entered the room. She walked over, placed a hand on David's shoulder, and looked at me with thinly veiled contempt. "Mrs. Bennett," she said sweetly, venom behind every word. "David's telling the truth. Things are dire. Don't you want your grandkids to have a roof over their heads?" "My grandchildren will be fine as long as their parents still have an apartment," I replied sharply. "But I may not be thanks to you." That's when David snapped. "Mom, we're drowning in debt," he shouted. "And it's not just anyone's fault. It's your precious Mark. Your husband. He took out a massive business loan secured against everything. His company tanked. Either we sell this apartment and pay off the debt or—" He didn't finish the sentence. Instead, he dragged his finger across his throat. Dramatic. Threatening. "And since your name's on the deed too, we need your signature. You don't have much of a choice. Sign it over, we'll sell, pay off the debt, and get something smaller. You'll get a room somewhere safe. Or other people will come. People without briefcases and polite smiles." My knees buckled. This couldn't be happening. Mark, my Mark. An honest man, a factory engineer who started a small appliance repair shop after retiring? What shady deals? What massive debt? He'd never taken risks. Never gambled. Every cent he earned, he brought home. This had to be a lie, a cruel lie designed to break me. "You're lying," I said, staring straight into David's eyes. "Your father didn't leave any debt." Rachel sneered. "Didn't he?" She pulled crumpled documents from her designer bag and tossed them on the table. Some kind of loan agreements with scribbled signatures that looked disturbingly like Mark's handwriting. I picked them up with shaking hands. The amounts listed made my head spin. If this was real, even selling the apartment wouldn't fully cover the debt. "You see now, Mom?" David said more gently. "Dad left us in this mess. This is the only way to save the family. Just sign. They stood over me, my son and his wife, like predators cornering prey. The notary turned toward the window, pretending to study the trees outside. Inside me, disbelief wrestled with terror. Something was wrong. My gut screamed it. This felt like a script, cold and rehearsed. I need time, I said, raising my eyes. At least until the 40-day memorial. Let me grieve in peace. David opened his mouth to argue, but Rachel stopped him with a subtle gesture. I could see she thought they'd already won, that I'd cave soon enough. Of course, Mrs. Bennett, she said sweetly. Take a little time. Just not too much. The people we owe aren't patient. They left, leaving me in the echoing silence of a haunted apartment. I sat on the sofa where Mark and I used to watch TV and stared at the documents meant to destroy my faith in my husband and steal my home. I didn't cry. There were no tears left. Only cold resolve. I had to find the truth. I went straight to Mark's desk. He was always meticulous. Important papers were kept in perfect order. He kept them in the top drawer locked, but I knew where he hid the spare key and the pencil cup. My heart pounded as I opened the drawer. Folders, apartment, insurance, repair receipts. All in place. No loans, no contracts. Nothing. I almost gave up when I found a small metal box at the bottom. It had a combination lock. I tried our wedding date. David's birthday. Mine. Nothing worked. And then I remembered Mark's favorite phrase during hard times, remember the first numbers. I never knew what he meant. But then it hit me, the phone number from our first little room, the one bedroom in that old shared building. I remembered it perfectly. 24,581. My fingers trembled as I spun the lock. Click. It opened. Inside, lined with crimson velvet, was a bundle of faded letters tied with an old ribbon, my letters to him during his long work trip up north. Beneath them, our black and white wedding photo. And under that, two things, a worn-out savings book and a thick sealed envelope with my name, to Nina, in his handwriting. Before I could even touch the envelope, the phone rang loud and shrill. I jumped. I already knew who it was. Mom? Have you thought about it? David's voice buzzed through the line. We need to answer the creditors. Behind him, I could hear Rachel hissing, push harder. Tell her the interest is piling up. I held the cold envelope to my chest like a life preserver in stormy waters. Mom, are you listening? David shouted. Stop stalling. Don't you care about your grandkids? I told you, I said quietly, I need time. My voice sounded surprisingly calm and steady. I even startled myself. She's thinking, David sneered into the phone. How long are you going to think, huh? I'll come by tomorrow for your answer. And it better be the right one for everyone's sake. He hung up. I stood in the middle of the room, not stunned by his threats, but by his betrayal. He'd used his own children as human shields in his assault on me. And in that moment, I knew I couldn't face this alone. I needed an ally. Someone I could trust. I dialed the number of my neighbor and longtime friend, Valerie Simmons. Valerie was a tough woman, sharp-tongued with a heart of gold. We had been close for over 30 years, ever since we moved into this apartment complex. Valerie, hey, I said into the phone. Can you come over? It's urgent. I'm already grabbing my coat, Nina, she replied instantly, no questions asked. 5 minutes later, Valerie was sitting at my kitchen table, peering at me over the rim of her glasses with a dark look. I couldn't hold it in, I told her everything. About David's visit with the notary, the awful things he said, and the supposed debt Mark had left behind. Valerie listened silently, the muscles in her jaw tightening as I spoke. The nerve of them. She finally exploded. David's always been a mama's boy. But ever since he married that leech Rachel, he's lost what little backbone he had. Debts? Give me a break. Your Mark wouldn't sweat a fly, let alone get into shady deals. Show me those damn papers, she demanded. I handed her the documents David had left. Valerie, who used to work as a senior accountant for a large manufacturing company, slipped on her glasses and began scrutinizing the pages. Let's see here, Horizon Financial Solutions, she muttered. Never heard of them. This stamp looks smudged. And the signature, it's close, but it looks traced. She looked up at me sharply. Nina, this looks like a fake. A sloppy one. They're counting on you being too heartbroken to notice. Her words matched the unease that had been gnawing at my gut. My heart eased slightly, Mark was innocent. But then, why was David doing all this? And what's that? She asked, nodding at the savings book and sealed envelope I was still holding. This is what Mark left in the secret compartment, I whispered. Well, what are you waiting for? Open it. Maybe this is the key to the whole damn performance. With shaking hands, I opened the envelope using a letter opener. Inside was a sheet of notebook paper folded neatly in four, covered in Mark's familiar handwriting. My dearest Nina, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer with you. I'm so sorry I couldn't shield you from all this in the end. I need to tell you the truth, something I've kept from you this past year to avoid worrying you. You remember when David wanted to open his own auto shop? He convinced me to help. I was a fool, I believed in him. We took out a loan from a small firm and I co-signed. The business tanked almost immediately. David panicked and begged me not to tell you, and especially not Rachel. He said she'd leave him if she found out he'd failed. So I took on the debt myself. Don't worry, Nina, they're not dangerous people. Just a predatory lender, one of those microfinance companies with sky-high interest rates. I was slowly paying it off from my pension and side jobs at the shop. I thought I'd manage before my time ran out, but my heart gave up. I don't know what David will do after I'm gone. I worry his weakness in Rachel's influence might push him into something awful. So I'm leaving you the savings book. There's enough in there to cover the remaining debt, $10,000. I'd saved it for a rainy day, hoping we could take a trip to the beach. It never happened. Use it to pay them off, Nina. And if you can, please forgive our son. He's not evil. Just weak. I have always loved you and I always will. Your Mark. I finished reading and the letter slipped from my hands. It was both a relief and a heartbreak. My husband hadn't betrayed me, he had sacrificed everything to protect us. Until his last breath, he carried the burden of our family. But David, he didn't just lie. He took his father's sacrifice and turned it into blackmail. He tarnished Mark's memory just to seize this apartment. Valerie placed a hand on my shoulder. She said nothing, but I could feel her trembling with fury. I looked at the savings book, then at the letter, then at the phone. The pain inside me was replaced by something sharper, clear and cold, resolve. Enough. Enough tears. Enough fear. Mark hadn't just left me money, he'd left me the truth. My weapon. I was going to use it. I wiped away the last tear, stood tall, and picked up the phone. This call wasn't going to David. I dialed a number I hadn't used in years. The dial tone felt like it stretched forever. Finally, a surprised male voice answered. Hello. Hi, Leon. It's Aunt Nina, I said. My voice was steadier than I expected. Leon, my nephew, son of my late sister, used to be close with me. But ever since he'd become a successful attorney in the city, we drifted apart. He lived in a different world now. But this wasn't the time for pride. Aunt Nina. Wow, it's been ages. How are you? I heard about Uncle Mark. I'm so sorry. I wanted to come, but I was out of town on business. Thank you, Leon. And yes, something has happened. I need your help. As a lawyer. For you? Of course. Whatever you need. Tell me everything. His voice instantly shifted to professional and serious. I told him everything. From David's visit and the suspicious documents, to Valerie's suspicions, the hidden box, and finally, Mark's letter. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, okay. Got it. Aunt Nina, first thing, don't sign anything. Absolutely nothing. Second, take photos of the loan papers and Mark's letter and text them to me immediately. I'll run a check on this, Horizon Financial Place, and analyze the documents. Okay, Leon. I'll do it right now, I said, feeling a strange calm settle over me. I wasn't alone anymore. And one more thing, he added before hanging up. Your son, he's in real danger. What he's doing may not just be immoral, it might be illegal. Fraud, maybe worse. Don't worry. We'll expose the truth. I'll call you the moment I find anything. When I hung up, it felt like a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. Valerie nodded approvingly. That's how you fight back. He sounds like a good one, smart, strong. Now let's send those photos. My granddaughter showed me how to use WhatsApp. We sent Leon everything right away. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I did chores without really registering them. My thoughts were only on tomorrow. What would David say? Could I pull off the role of the broken, unsure mother? At exactly 10 a.m. the next morning, the doorbell rang. David stood there alone. No Rachel. She must have decided it'd be more effective to send him alone to soften me up. Well, Mom, he asked, stepping into the kitchen and sitting at the same table where he used to sip tea with his father. I hope you made the right decision. I poured him some tea. My hands shook slightly. David. I don't know what to do, I stammered. I'm scared. Your father would never have done something like this. Maybe there's another way. There isn't, he snapped. I explained everything. You have to help us for the kids, for Dad's memory. You don't want his name dragged through court, do you? He pressed every emotional button he could find. It took every ounce of strength in me not to scream the truth at him. But I remembered Leon's advice. I just need one more day, I said quietly. Just one more day to think it over. Tomorrow. I'll give you my answer tomorrow. I promise, I whispered, lowering my eyes. David sighed, clearly annoyed. Fine. One day. But no more. I'll be back this time tomorrow with the notary, and everything better be ready. He left without even touching his tea. As the door clicked shut behind him, I exhaled. Round one was mine. That evening, Leon called again. His voice was sharper, angrier. Aunt Nina, I've done some digging. And it's worse than I thought. I held my breath. First of all, Horizon Financial Solutions is just a predatory loan company. Technically legal, but operating under shell names and with mob-style tactics. Turns out they specialize in seizing property from desperate borrowers. Second, the papers David gave you? Total fakes. I showed them to an expert in document forensics. Your husband's signature was forged. And the notary stamp? It was printed from a color printer. Badly too. I felt lightheaded. So, there had never been any loan co-signed by Mark? But that's not even the worst part, Leon continued. Here's the kicker. The loan does exist, but it's in David's name. He took out a $3,000 loan a year ago. With interest and penalties, it ballooned to about $8,000. That matches exactly what Uncle Mark said in his letter. He was paying it down out of his own pension and side jobs. Leon paused, his voice full of restrained anger. David knew his father left you that money. So he tried to pull a double scam, take the cash under false pretenses and get you to sign the apartment over to him. Lying about some fake debt. This isn't just a family mess anymore, Aunt Nina. This is felony fraud. I sat in stunned silence. My son was ready to break the law to rob his own mother. What do I do now? I whispered. Tomorrow when he comes you won't be alone, Leon said firmly. I'll be there. With a colleague. And that notary David's bringing? He's going to become a very useful witness. Are you ready for this? Was I? I looked at Mark's photo on the sideboard. His eyes seemed tired but kind. He wouldn't want his son to go to prison. But he also wouldn't want his son to become a monster. Sometimes to save someone you have to stop them hard and fast. Yes, Leon, I said clearly. I'm ready. Tomorrow would be the hardest day since Mark's funeral. But it had to be done. For Mark's memory, for myself, and maybe in a strange way for David too. I laid the money on the table. Put Mark's letter beside it. Then I waited. For the court hearing I was about to hold in our own kitchen. The next morning I felt oddly calm. Like a surgeon before a risky operation, scared but certain of the steps. An hour before the meeting, Leon arrived with a broad-shouldered man named Paul, his law partner. They didn't want tea. They just asked me to act natural and speak only when Leon gave the signal. At exactly 10 a.m. the doorbell rang. I opened it. David stood there, with the same notary from before, Mr. Irving Spencer. David's face was tense, determined. Well, Mom, are you ready? He asked, stepping inside. When he saw the two unfamiliar men in the living room, he froze. So did the notary. Hello, David. Come in, I said calmly. This is my nephew Leon, you remember him. And this is his colleague. Leon stood and greeted them. David. Long time no see. Come in, Mr. Spencer. Don't just hover at the door. We're about to have a very interesting legal discussion. David glanced between us, clearly rattled. Panic flickered across his face. What are you doing here? He finally asked Leon, trying to keep his voice level. I'm helping Aunt Nina go over some documents, Leon replied mildly, though his tone had steel in it. He picked up the forged paperwork from the table. Like these, for example. Mr. Spencer, wouldn't you agree these are unusual? The notary blanched and took a step back. I wasn't aware of the details. I was just asked to certify a property transfer. A property transfer based on forged documents? Leon raised an eyebrow. He turned to David. There is no debt in Mark Peterson's name. But there is a debt in yours. A $3,000 loan that ballooned to $8,000. Your father, rest his soul, was paying it off for you. Quietly. Without burdening your mother. And now you want to rob her of her home. based on lies. David jumped up from his chair. This is garbage. Lies. Mom, don't listen to him. He's twisting everything. I stood and placed Mark's letter in front of him. Read this, I said, my voice trembling. Read what your father wrote before he died. He knew everything. And he forgave you. He even left the money to pay off your debt. David stared at the handwriting. Slowly, his expression crumbled. His confidence fell away like a cheap mask. As he read, his shoulders slumped lower and lower. When he finished, he looked up at me, eyes wide, broken. He didn't cry. He howled. Low, guttural, like a wounded animal. I'm sorry, Mom, he choked. It was Rachel. She said it was the only way. That we'd lose everything. I didn't want to. I just got in too deep. Leon turned to the notary. Mr. Spencer, I assume you realize you've become part of a criminal fraud case. Your notary license is at risk. However, if you give a formal statement right now, explaining who asked you to do what, we can possibly treat you as a cooperating witness. The notary, pale as a ghost, nodded quickly. Yes, yes. I'll tell everything. It was his wife, Rachel. She came to me. She said the mother was old anyway, and this was just a formality. I didn't know the whole picture. David flinched as if struck. The realization hit him, he'd been used. The woman he betrayed his mother for had seen him as nothing more than a pawn. Leon gestured to his colleague. Paul, please escort Mr. Spencer out. Take his formal statement. They left the room. Now it was just the three of us, me, my devastated son, and Leon, who stood like a pillar of justice. What happens now? David whispered, eyes locked on mine. Now, I said, pointing at the stack of bills, you're going to take that money, your father's last gift, and pay off your debt. Every cent. Then you're going to go back to your apartment and figure out what your life is going to look like. With Rachel or without her, that's up to you. But no more lies. Not to me, not to yourself. Leon looked at me in surprise. But Aunt Nina, he committed a crime. He made a terrible mistake. Leon, I interrupted gently. But he's still my son. And his father asked me to forgive him. I won't press charges. But that doesn't mean I'm forgetting any of this. He'll have to earn back my trust, inch by inch. David quietly took the money, dropped to his knees, and hugged my legs. Then he broke down, sobbing like he hadn't since he was a child. I placed my hand on his head. I felt no rage, no resentment, only sorrow and a deep, aching compassion. 6 months passed. David divorced Rachel. She tried to cause drama, demanded a share of the property, but Leon quickly showed her the legal consequences if she pushed too far. She disappeared from our lives. David sold his one-bedroom apartment. He paid me back every dollar his father had spent covering his debt. With what remained, and a little help from me, he bought a small studio near my place. He got a job as a basic auto mechanic. Now he comes over every weekend. Not to ask for anything, but to help, fixing faucets, grabbing groceries, sitting with me over tea. We don't speak much about what happened. But I see his eyes. There's no more deception there. Just pain, shame, and a quiet hope that he can still be forgiven. He takes the kids on weekends. I help out while he works. I believe he can become a good father. The kind Mark once was for him. Sometimes I sit alone in our quiet apartment, look at Mark's photo, and think I made the right choice. Forgiveness isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the only medicine powerful enough to heal the deepest wound and give someone a second chance to begin again.